Saturday Snap Count Week 5 Prediction Show, possibly the first public episode of Saturday Snap Count. We've got tons of marquee matchups. This is the best weekend that we've had thus far, and we have tons of games in each time slate. So let's get to it. Roll music. All right, thank you for joining me on Saturday Snap Count. My name is Scott. I am your host for this show. This is a one-man show for now. We will have people pop in and out as time goes on. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this show because this could very well be the first show that goes public. Episode number 1, when you look at it, hopefully amongst the many episodes to come in the future. I've done several practice runs. I have done focus groups. I have done testing, experimenting. I've done it all. And I think we might just be ready to go public with this. You may be asking, why in the world would we go public in week 5? That's because it's the best week of the year so far. There's tons of games to talk about, and they're some of the best matchups we've had all year. Water break. So we have a lot of matchups to get to. Yeah. I don't know what else to really tell you about me. You can see if you're watching on YouTube, I have a little bit of a setup back here that I'll go through real quick. I got the Pilsner Cup right back here. If I could see my finger, wrong side. Pilsner Cup, that's the golf tournament that I won. It's official. I got a few albums here that I like. I'll try to switch those in and out. Got the toolbox / lunch pail. It just shows the toughness that we have on this show. I'm an avid Ole Miss fan, diehard Ole Miss fan, so you'll always see that jersey up there. And I got the World Series ring from the College Baseball World Series. This is a football show. The Matt Corral Ole Miss card that I like. It's got some cool stuff on there. The picture with all the scores and games from the Ole Miss World Championship year, World Series year. And then, of course, one of my favorite sweatshirts from Barstool Sports from the Mostly Sports Show with Brandon Walker and Mark Titus got the football shirt. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I know this is weird. This is all. This is not predictions or analysis, but this is just getting to know me a little bit, as this very well could be the first public episode of Saturday Snap Count. As I said, this is a one-man show, so most of the time you are just going to see me, but hopefully we will get some people who aren't so shy and will pop on every now and then to give me their predictions, their analysis. And before we jump into the games, let me give you one more disclaimer. This is not my full-time job. I do this because I love college football. I love to spend my free time watching highlights, reading articles, doing analysis, figuring out as much as I can about some of these huge games and some of these great teams that work so hard. It's just a passion of mine. So as I'm going through these, I will give you my predictions, and they will be covers against the spread and overs and unders. Now, that being said, I do not condone gambling. I'm not giving you these predictions so that you can go and spend your money on them and gamble. I myself am not going to be promoting some sports book or anything like that. I do that simply because if I was on here to just pick winners and losers, I would win most of them because I feel pretty confident, and that would not set me apart from any other show that you could go watch. But if I can give you good wins and a good record on spreads and overs and unders, that sets me apart and validates all the work that I do to try to figure out these games. So again, not condoning you to go gamble any money or anything like that. We are here because we love college football, and we have to find a way to be unique. So that is my end. Currently, I have been keeping track of all my predictions this year, although they have not been public, and I'm doing pretty good. I will just start off with a little pre-show validation. Currently, I'm 31-23 on predictions this season, so I feel pretty good about that. Let's talk about the games we have today, and then we will break them down, and we'll get you out of here and onto your day, hopefully sooner and sooner coming Saturday, the slate that we have, which is amazing. I've got 4 games on the morning, 4 games in the afternoon, and then 3 games on the night slate, the primetime slate, and we're going to talk about every one of them. Some of them I may have a lot of information, some of them I may have very little. But I will give you what I have, and hopefully all my predictions are right. I sound super smart, and maybe one day I can make this a full-time gig. Who knows? But for now, it's for fun. We're here to have fun. This is a fun show. This is a family show. No vulgarity on here. Is that a word? Double check me and let me know. Let's get right into it. I don't know what else to do now other than just to get into it. Hopefully, keep this episode short so I'm not holding you back from whatever else you're doing. But what could be more important than listening to me talk about football? I mean, this is fun. This is what we do. First up, first game, the in the morning slate. This should be an 11 a.m. kickoff. Notre Dame on the road at Arkansas. Arkansas is currently a home dog at plus 4.5. This is being recorded Thursday night at 9:35 p.m. on a beautiful night here. So these may be a little bit different by the time you're listening to this. This is just what I have at this very moment. So Notre Dame is minus 4.5. They are the favorite on the road in Fayetteville. I'm going to try to give you as much eye contact to this camera as I can. But I do have notes over here on my right, which is your left. And I do have the list of games over here on my left, which is your right. So I do apologize if you're actually watching if I have a lack of eye contact. It's just because I have notes literally everywhere, and I am on a desk made for ants. So I have to spread everything out. And I take a lot of water breaks because the more that I talk, the drier my mouth gets. So let's roll. Let's get into this Notre Dame-Arkansas game. I have a stat on here that I love. It's one of my favorite stats in college football. Some people think this is crazy because there's so many stats that you could glorify here. But this is a stat that I found a while ago. It seems to work a lot when you're predicting games, and it really does help. And it's called the simple rating system. So it is a stat. Basically what it does is it takes your score differential, so how bad you're beating teams or how much you're losing by, and puts it together with your strength of schedule, and it basically gives you a number. So for example, Notre Dame, their simple rating system, Notre Dame's simple rating system number is 21.96. An average team on that scale is a 0. So if you are just right in the middle of everybody, you're not great at anything, you're not bad at anything, you're going to be a 0. So for Notre Dame to be a 21.96, that means that against an average team on a neutral field, they would win by 21 points. Now I know for Notre Dame that sounds ridiculous, but you have to also think who they've played. They've played good competition and the potential that they have, especially on a neutral field. And if you really put that to the test, I think that really does become a true number. So that's going to be the first stat we throw out tonight for this game. And I'll probably use it on a lot of these games. But for right now, Notre Dame, 21.96 on the simple rating system. Arkansas, 13.25. If you do the math on that, that's about an 8-point difference. Meaning, on a neutral field, this spread would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 points. Now, right now, we know on the road, Arkansas is a 4-point dog. So the number's not too far off. We have a pretty big gap there. Usually you don't see gaps quite that big on that scale. But here's something else that we've confirmed over time. Home teams typically get about a 3-point edge from Vegas, especially if they have a good home field environment. If they're a somewhat average to decent team, they're always going to get that 3-point edge. We'll actually talk about that because that does come up later in the show. Now, I will specifically reference people. I don't really mind doing that. I give credit where credit is due, okay? And I'm a novice in this game. Now, I've been trying to predict, and I've been watching college football for years and years and years. I love it, but there's people out there that make lots of money doing exactly what I'm doing right now. And so I put a lot of credit in them, a lot of value in their opinions. Now, I've heard that just this week, the 3-point edge to home teams, just this week, that's in small spreads, from David Pollock, from the Crane and Crow crew, and from plenty of other people. So if you think about that, you get a 3-point edge at home. Arkansas has a great home environment, and they're really not a bad team. They're not quite what their record indicates. Now, everybody's going to be hung up on their game against Memphis last week. I think it's definitely reasonable to consider that. But if you take that into consideration, that puts Notre Dame at about a 1-point favorite on the road here if you really think about it and you take away that 3-point edge. And that means a lot to me especially. So making that really a true 1-point game as far as what Vegas is predicting. I like Notre Dame in this situation. So we've talked about the simple rating system. Now, if we really break down some of their players, here's some things that I really like. C.J. Carr for Notre Dame, he's averaging about 10 yards per attempt. Now that goes a long way. When you can get first downs against a team that has a vulnerable defense such as Arkansas, you can do numbers, for lack of a better term. You can put up numbers with 10 yards per attempt. He's at about 245 yards per game, which is really good for a quarterback at that level, especially against the competition that he has played. Now, I'm going to catch myself talking about things where I really could benefit from having some of these numbers up in front of me, but quite frankly, my internet is not good enough to be running 10 different windows at once. So I've got my recording window and I've got my list of games window up, and that's about all I can work with right now. But 10 yards per attempt, 240 yards per game. And they have a running back by the name of Jeremiah Love. And he's at about 284 yards in 3 games, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. But here's the kicker on that. He's at about 5.5 yards per rush, which is pretty good. I mean, you do that twice, that's first down. And I think they would take that just about every time. He's got 3 touchdowns on the year. And then they have a backup, or a split back, if you want to call it, named Jadarian Price, who's got 187 yards on the year, 6.9 yards per rush, and 5 touchdowns. So he's getting less snaps, but he's putting up better numbers. So you put those two together, that's a dual running back system right there. That's about as good as anybody could ask for from any team all across the country. Now, you look at what Arkansas has done this year. Their defense, like I've said, has been super vulnerable. They're giving up lots of yards. They're giving up lots of points. And you put this Notre Dame kind of mixed passing rushing attack against them. I think if nothing else, Notre Dame can score points. And if we've seen, like, especially you go back to the Ole Miss game, if you can score with Arkansas, because they're going to score, then you can win the game, just like Ole Miss did. That was a poor defensive performance from Ole Miss in that game. I hate to say it. I'm a diehard Ole Miss fan, as I've said. But if you're going to go in a shootout with them, you can beat them, and that being Arkansas. And you look at the Arkansas-Memphis game, it was very similar. High scoring, both teams in the 30s. It's a shootout. Now, granted, Arkansas had that game won in every aspect up until the very last play. Now, that's where we get into play calling and what I really disagree with. Now, I love Sam Pittman as much as the next guy. I hate to see him lose because I think he's a great guy in general. I think he's a good program builder as far as lifting up players, getting the most out of his players. He's very respectable. And I think he's widely respected in his industry, in the coaching game. And I hate to see him lose. But what they did against Memphis, just trying to set up a field goal, I know that's the smartest decision, but you're in the red zone with about a minute left, and then you just basically just start running the ball up the middle. I just don't play that, because the field goal is not a given. It's not a guarantee from a college kicker at any time. Now, that would have been like a 20-yard field goal right in the middle, and I get that. But you've got the firepower and the talent to just punch the ball in the end zone with enough tries. Not to say that they weren't trying, but it was very obvious they were playing for the field goal there and hoping that Memphis wasn't going to have enough time to get a last possession. And that's just where I just don't mix right there with the play calling. I think Marcus Freeman might be a little bit more aggressive than that. He knows that he's got to win out. Now, obviously, both teams have 2 losses, so if both teams win out, they probably have a chance at the playoff. Are they both going to win out? No. There's probably a good chance that neither of them do, but I would say Notre Dame at this point is probably set up with a better schedule and with better opportunities because they don't have to go through the SEC like Arkansas does. So, again, a good passing game. I like C.J. Carr a lot. A split back running game that's really good against really good competition so far this year. Notre Dame's at about 44 points per game, and they're getting about half of their third downs right now. I'd like to see the third down number be a little bit higher, but scoring 44 points a game, I mean, let's be real. If they score 44 points on the road at Arkansas, they're probably winning the game. I don't know that Arkansas has the ability to win a shootout again like that because they've lost 2 in a row. Now, both of them are on the road, and I will give them credit for that. But this Notre Dame team is going to be more similar to what they saw at Ole Miss as far as talent is concerned. And if we're being real, and I'm being totally unbiased, Notre Dame should have a more talented roster when it comes to that. And as my guy Josh Pate says, paper don't win games, players do. So, we can say they're probably better on paper, but really it doesn't go quite that far. Now, I will say Taylor Green, in my opinion, is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He can throw as well as anybody. Now, I know he's had a couple interceptions really early on, and there's still some quarterbacks out there that have not done that yet. But interceptions are going to come. That's just the nature of the game. But he can run as good as any quarterback in the country. And I mean that. Any quarterback in the country, you name him, he can run with them. And the fact that he can throw it as good as he does, I think he's super, super dangerous. You saw what they did in the first half against Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss made the adjustment in the second half and kind of got away from, letting him kind of run all over the place. Marcus Freeman typically has better defensive performances than some. I think they will have seen this Ole Miss game that Arkansas had and be prepared for that RPO situation that Arkansas is really good at. Notre Dame has about a 12-point differential. So again, they're scoring about 44 a game, giving up about 32 a game. I don't love that. But again, if we're going to call a shootout here, I'm going to give it to Notre Dame because I think they're going to last a little bit longer. And the last stat that I have on this one, Notre Dame is 12-3 on the road against unranked opponent. Now, Arkansas at this point might be a lot better than some of their unranked opponents on the road that they've played, given that Notre Dame is independent. They kind of bounce around on conferences that they play. So their unranked opponents might not be quite what, let's say what Arkansas's unranked opponents might have been in the past when these stats are compiling. But 12-3 is impressive regardless of who you're playing. So all that being said, I'm leaning Notre Dame in this game, especially when it's a smaller number at 4, I guess 4.5. I have 4 on my paper, 4.5 on my computer. But at 4.5, I'm going to take Notre Dame in a close game. I think this is a difference of, a score, a stop, and a score in the fourth quarter. That's 2 possessions that you get that number right there. And I just think Arkansas is in a really tough spot right now. Kind of like we're all predicting Sam Pittman loses his job at some point. Now, some people think that coaches that are on the hot seat coach a lot better, and players tend to play for them and support. I just don't know if we're at that point. I think the Memphis loss last week was really hard on them, and we're going to see it. And if I'm wrong and Arkansas comes out hot and they win this game and they cover, I'm happy about that because I think an Arkansas team that's good is good for football. And Notre Dame, I'm one of the bigger Notre Dame haters. I hate that they're still independent. I think that they're benefiting from that, and they're avoiding joining a conference because of that. So, granted, I would be happy to see this prediction go the other way. Not that I want to lose. I don't want to lose. But at the same time, I think if Arkansas is going to prove it to me, then I'd be totally fine with that. So, Notre Dame minus the 4.5, and that number may move. So, we'll see about that. That's the pick for that game. Let's move on to Georgia Tech and Wake Forest. Now, one thing I'm going to throw around a lot on this show is a principal prediction, meaning that I am obligated to predict the game in a certain way. And a lot of times there's reasons for that. So to not waste too much time on this game, Georgia Tech minus 14 currently is a principal prediction. I have supported Georgia Tech from the very beginning. Going back to last season, we saw their potential. They've lived up to it this year. They've got good wins against Colorado, which is a good, talented Power 4 team. They may not have the results to back it up. And then obviously a huge win against Clemson at home that they're coming off of. And you would figure they'd have a letdown spot after a high emotional win like that, but they did not. This past week against a smaller G5 team, they totally blew them out of the water. I think it was Temple or something like that. So they are away from the letdown spot. Wake Forest lost to NC State, which has one of the worst defenses in the country, and they lost to them by 10 at home. So I don't think Georgia Tech going into Wake Forest is really going to matter at this point. I can't even read my own handwriting in this note. Wake Forest beat Kennesaw State 10-9 at home. So a 1-point game to Kennesaw State. I mean, Georgia Tech's going to come in here. I think they're going to run through this team. So we're not going to waste too much time on that pick. That's a principal prediction. Georgia Tech minus the 14. Water break. Next game up, we're rolling, is plus 5.5 on the road at Kansas State. I'm not going to waste any time on this. I have no idea why Vegas, as good as they are at predicting games, picking spreads, picking numbers, why in the world they continue to give Kansas State points. I genuinely don't understand why they continue to favor Kansas State. Kansas State has proven nothing this season, okay? Their only win is to an FCS team. They lost to Army, who also lost to an FCS team. Their only credible loss this year was week 0 in Ireland against Iowa State, and that game was about as sloppy as you could ask for. Their somewhat talented players have been super lackluster this year so far. UCF is undefeated coming off their last game against a huge blowout against North Carolina. Call that what you will. North Carolina is terrible, but they have one of the best coaches that's ever walked this earth coaching them. I know they have a lot of new players. And again, I'm telling you that they're a terrible team, but you go and you blow out a team like that that's going to be somewhat well coached. I think Wake Forest has I think Kansas State has absolutely nothing to offer UCF. I don't know why that UCF is not getting credit for what they've done this year. So I would absolutely predict UCF to cover, especially when you're giving them 5.5 points. So UCF plus 5.5 there. Next up, Vandy. Vandy is at home against Utah State. That's another, it really isn't even a principal prediction. Vandy has been the most impressive team this year, arguably, as anybody in the country, because they continue to ride the hot hand in Diego Pavia. They came off a historical year last year, beating Alabama, that was number 1 ranked at the time. Now we know that they didn't quite pan out. We will talk about them a little bit later, but Vandy has proven my predictions week in and week out. This is a team in Utah State that lost to A&M by 22 points in week 2 when we really didn't know much about A&M. And then Vandy is 4-0 against the spread this year. And I give a lot of credit to teams that cover consistently week in and week out. So again, we're not going to waste a lot of time on this one. Vandy has covered every game they've played, and they've done it comfortably. And one thing that they're notable of is beating teams that they're supposed to beat by the number. You look at the Georgia State game, the Virginia Tech game, and even the South Carolina game. I mean, I think Clark Lee over there knows that they don't have room to just skate by against teams that they're supposed to win. And I think that's part of the reason why they cover, not because they have the number or the spread in mind, but I think they just know with their reputation and their program being just Vanderbilt, being the black and gold, everybody's going to count them out. Everybody's going to think they can't win the big games. And one thing that you can do to build your resume when you're assuming you're going to lose a couple of games is beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And that's what they do. So Vandy at home, they are itching to get to next week and play Alabama. So I think minus 22.5. I think the look-ahead spot is irrelevant here. Vanderbilt, I'm predicting to cover the 22.5 point favorite that they got. Now, let's move on to the afternoon, the 2:30 slate. Let me turn my page here, see if I can do this smoothly. Get that out of the way without my notes falling over, because I got them propped up like you wouldn't believe over here. First one, Ohio State. This is one of the bigger games. Ohio State at Washington. Washington is being given 8.5 points at home. Now, Washington is a tougher place to play, okay? People don't think about that, and people don't realize that. And the only real publicity they've gotten is when Michael Penix Jr. was there, and they deserve a lot more than that. Michael Penix Jr. left, Kalen DeBoer left, and they have just fallen off the face of the earth, but their performance has not. They have won every game so far this year. They have a good environment at home. It's a tough place to play. And Ohio State, I understand, is one of the better teams in the country. You'll see in my shows coming up, I typically try to do 2 shows a week. I'll do this show on Thursday, have it out by Friday, and it's my predictions. And then I'll have a show on Monday or Tuesday kind of recapping the previous week. And I typically will do my very own top 10 on that Tuesday show. And if you will see that in the future, you'll see, especially depending on how this game goes, is I have Ohio State the number 2 team in the country. I think they're super, super talented. They're as talented as anybody else in the country. They have one of the better wins with Texas. But what we're seeing is that win's playing out similar to like LSU's win over Clemson, where at the time we thought it was massive. Now, I'm not taking any credibility away from Texas, but we all know that Arch Manning hasn't lived up to his hype this year. And I think that win is not aging super well for Ohio State. So you talk about them going to a toxic road environment at Washington. This is a conference game now. I think Washington has a little bit of an edge here. Now, I do have some advanced stats here. As far as the simple rating system, Ohio State is at a 15. So that's a pretty good number. Anything above 0 is good. The higher up you go away from 0 is even better. Now, Ohio State at 15, that just means they're going to beat any average team on a neutral site by at least 15 points. That's pretty good. Um, Now you talk about what Washington has. Washington's at a 13, so it's only a 2-point difference. This is an 8-point spread. So they're a 2-point difference on an average team on a neutral field. I put a lot of credibility into that simple rating system number, and you're going to see that play out. Now, it may be totally wrong for this game, but this isn't factoring in future games. This is factoring in games that have already happened. One thing I'm going to say a million times, I'm going to beat it to death on this show, is body of work. Now, when you look at body of work, that's what the simple rating system is valuing, body of work, okay? Has nothing to do with who you have upcoming or anything. So again, Ohio State at 15.95, Washington at 13.75. So you're just around a 2-point differential there on that number. And the only real advantage Ohio State has there is strength of schedule. Both of these teams' strength of schedule is in the negative, so it's below average. But when you look at that comparison, the 2-point differential there is not even close to the 8.5 that Vegas has given this game. Now Desmond Williams for Washington has 6 touchdowns and no picks this year in the air. That's pretty impressive. And Julian Sayin has 8 touchdowns, but he's got 3 interceptions. And they've played basically nobody outside of Texas. So 3 interceptions against a super soft schedule really worries me for Ohio State. He's new to this, Julian Sayin is. He's going into an environment that's going to be tough, at least early on, and he's known to just kind of be a little bit too aggressive, as you can see with the 3 interceptions. Washington has the leading rusher in the country as far as touchdowns. Jonah Coleman, he leads the country with 9 touchdowns on the ground, and that is super. Anytime you lead the country in an offensive stat, I'm going to give you a lot of credit because you've earned it. 9 touchdowns, and there's no ties there. There's no tie for first in rushing touchdowns. He's the solo leader. Ohio State has allowed over 100 yards on the ground on average per game. They gave up 166 yards on the ground to Texas. Now, Texas is their only credible opponent up to this point. So if Texas can get 166 yards on the ground in that terrible, terrible performance we saw from them, why would the leading rusher from Washington not be able to get at least that? And I think if Washington gets anywhere close to 200 yards, like that number, the 166 that Texas got, if they get anything close to 200 on the ground, I have them at least being close in this game. Now, if you want my honest opinion, I think they have a good chance to win. Now, something else that we'll go back to from time to time, and I've learned this from Josh Pate, who is probably my number one guy that I will listen to and take advice from. Josh Pate has said something that has resonated with me over time, and that is when you're picking a home dog against the spread, you have to ask yourself, can they win the game outright? Because if they can't win the game outright, why in the world would you predict them to keep it close enough to cover a number? I think Washington can win the game outright, and I think a lot of people do too. I'm not the only one on that. Now, some people might not want to admit that, but I think they have the ability to win this game. So when you're giving them more than a touchdown to work with, basically they're starting at an 8.5 point advantage. I don't see any reason why they can't keep it at least close. Now, again, I'm not predicting them to win this game. I think they have the ability to win this game. And Washington has 2 of the best offensive linemen in the country. So you put a really good runner, arguably the best running back in the country as far as scoring is concerned, behind 2 of the best offensive linemen in the country. That's a recipe for success, at least as far as just keeping this game close. So I'm going to predict Washington plus the 8.5 here in this game. I think Ohio State is just a little shell-shocked. I think the pressure gets to a young Julian Sayin. Now, down the road, it might not be that way. He might be one of the better quarterbacks in the country a year from now. I don't know. We're not there yet. But for right now, I think the environment, I think the what you have at stake for this game, both teams looking to stay undefeated. I think if nothing else, Washington can keep this game close. So I would predict Washington plus 8.5. Next game, probably my biggest game, of course, LSU at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, at the time of recording this, is a 1.5 point favorite, and I love that number. I don't have anything written down for this game as far as notes because I've lived this game for years and years. Now, one thing that is important to note, the last 4 games in this series, 2 on the road at LSU, 2 in Oxford, the home team has won. I don't see any reason why that stat is broken at this point. Ole Miss is one of the toughest places to play. That's bias completely out of here. I'm not trying to be biased. Now, I will say my predictions. Don't listen to my predictions for Ole Miss games if you're afraid that my bias is going to get in the way, because sometimes it will. I'm never going to predict that they're going to lose a game, because that's just not who I am as far as a fan, and I will put that out as a disclaimer, so you don't have to worry about it. But I will be genuine in my predictions and what I have to say. So take it for what it's worth. But the home teams in the last 4 years have succeeded in these games. Ole Miss, you can look that up, one of the best records at home. They are in a group of three as far as most home wins in the last couple of years, and that's Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. So a super hard environment. I think everybody in Oxford is looking forward to this game. This is going to be an extremely, extremely tough place to play for LSU. And something we've seen for LSU this year is that they have just done enough. The Clemson loss or the Clemson win in week 1 has not done well for them over time. That has just gotten worse and worse. And I think what we've seen is, number one, they're not running the ball well, and that's Ole Miss's biggest thing that you can expose as an opponent is the fact that their run defense is the worst part of their defense, and LSU's just not doing it all that well. So you think, well, if they're not doing that well, then surely the passing game is good. You got Nussmeier. Well, let me fill you in. That's not doing all that well either. Now, it's definitely got the edge over the running offense, the rushing. But still, if you really break it down, Nussmeier, he hasn't been 100%. Now, people seem to think that he's going to be 100% for this game. But who's to say? I mean, these teams have battled it out for 4 years in a row now. Ole Miss got the win against Jaden Daniels 2 years ago at home. That was a super electric win. It came down to the wire. The total was over 100. And I foresee a very similar turnout in this game. I think this is going to be points on top of points on top of points, because Ole Miss's defense has holes. LSU's defense has holes. Now, LSU's defense is the better part of their game. It definitely overshadows their offense. But I think their offense is gettable from Ole Miss's defense's perspective, especially in the air, considering that's what we do well. And I think Ole Miss is going to score points against everybody they play. There's not going to be a single team that's going to shut them down all year, regardless of who the quarterback is. Everybody wants to talk about who's going to be the quarterback and who gives you the best chance to win. Well, let me tell you right now, the best chance to win is Trinidad Chambliss. Okay, he's proven it time and time again against solid opponents. And I think Austin Simmons is probably the starter. But as Lane Kiffin said, until he was 100% healthy, he will not start a game. And I think if you see Trinidad starting this game, which he will, that just shows you that he's not quite ready. And maybe there's a little bit of that as they're just not ready to move on from Trinidad. Ride the hot hand, as people say. And I'm totally in agreement with that. I've been telling people all day today, because we've had almost a week's time to think about this game. I have the same vibes in this game as I had last year at the Georgia game. When we went into that Georgia game last week, I was so intimidated by Georgia. It was a down year for them. They had already lost a game, but I was afraid as much as I was against any opponent last year against Georgia. And as we went through the week, everybody was picking Ole Miss to win the game, and I could not figure out why. I'm like, why in the world are we picking against Georgia? I know that they're on the road. Ole Miss is doing well. They absolutely had to have the Georgia win, which they got. But I just could not figure out, as biased as I was for Ole Miss, why people were picking Ole Miss. And it's the same way I felt on Monday of this week. I was worried about LSU coming in. I was afraid that they just have better experience. They have better wins on their resume. At the time, I think they are a little bit better in some categories than we are that I feel are very important. But what it comes down to is everybody around is picking Ole Miss, or at least more people are picking Ole Miss than LSU. So I'm starting to get the same vibe. I'm worried about the game. I'm nervous. I hate playing LSU because I hate to lose to LSU. But everybody around me that gets paid a lot of money to do what I'm doing right now is picking Ole Miss, and you've got to put some value in that. So, of course, I am going to predict Ole Miss to cover the 1.5. I think it's super generous to give us only 1 point there. So take that for what it's worth from an Ole Miss fan. I have Ole Miss minus 1.5. Let's move on. Auburn on the road at Texas A&M. Simple rating system has Auburn at a 13.9 and has A&M at a 27.64. That is the highest number that I have seen on that stat, the simple rating system, which I've talked about enough on this show. Go back and listen if you've just been skipping around. But 27.64 is as big of a number as I have seen. So they think that stat proves that Texas A&M against an average team on a neutral field would beat that team by 27 points, nearly 28 points. That is astounding. We're at a 13. That's quite the differential. I mean, that is a huge number in the middle there. And their strength of schedule, they've got a huge edge too. Auburn's strength of schedule is only at a 2 when 0 is an average, and A&M is at an 11. Now, we saw A&M go on the road, beat Notre Dame. It was super impressive. I think Auburn is in a little bit of a letdown spot here. I think they're super bummed about the loss to Oklahoma when they felt like they really had the opportunity to beat that team who, as far as right now, of course, before the John Mateer injury, people thought was one of the best teams in the country. I myself had them in my very own top 10. But I think this is just going to be too much of a task for Auburn to go on the road again, have another sweat again against a team that on paper is probably better than them again. I think they are going to be hung up on last week. The missed penalty on the trick play, we've talked about that in our earlier show, which that's not public, but we've talked about it. I feel really bad for Auburn in that situation. I can't believe I just said those words, but I do. But I think this is just a little bit too much for them right now. I don't think they're going to be properly recovered from that game. I don't think they're going to be quite over that result. And I think A&M is just going to be a little bit too much for them. I put Marcel Reed in the same category as Taylon Green. He is super, super dangerous because he does both really well. Now, we have a lot of parity in this game currently with quarterbacks because people see quarterbacks that can run really well and don't have all that bad of stats throwing the ball, so they think, oh, they're a dynamic quarterback that can do everything. Okay, to say that they can do everything is an overstatement. Okay, there's only a few that can really do everything and do it really well. I put Marcel Reed in that category. Now, he tends to get a little aggressive, similar to Julian Sayin, where he kind of throws picks in bad spots because he's trying to force the ball. But I think one thing he does super well is trust his legs. So, he does run as well as anybody in the country. I think it's going to be really hard for them to stop that. And again, I think on the road, the 12th man, this is going to be a super hard place to play. Texas A&M thinks they have a shot. Auburn is playing with their back against the wall. In this spot right now, the number's at 6.5. I think A&M finds a way to win by a touchdown. I think that's a super generous number. I was really expecting this number to be at 7.5, which does change things. If you can believe a 1-point difference changes things. But when you're talking about 6.5 as one possession and 7.5 as two possessions, that's a huge difference. So again, A&M winning by a touchdown, I think is totally attainable in this spot. Now, Auburn was really impressive on the road against Oklahoma last week just to be close in that game. I don't think that game means anything for this game, really. I think it definitely made me a little bit more nervous, and it probably dropped this number down. I think originally before the end result of that Oklahoma game, this number was probably closer to 13, 12 or 13 if I had to guess. But it's not. I think it benefited A&M by getting that number down. A&M has been nothing but impressive this year. So I'm going to predict A&M minus 6.5 there. Now let's move on to one of the tougher games. I will most often pick all of the marquee games to talk about. Water break. Drink more water, folks. It's good for you. I had a guest lined up for this show that's typically my Tennessee expert. He was unable to come on tonight, but he did give me some information. I was going to actually predict this game predict the spread here, but this is going to be tough. I don't really know what to think of this game. I think Mississippi State's one of the harder places to play with the cowbells. I mean, they're breaking rules down there. You're not supposed to have artificial noisemakers, but they just let it go down there. As an Ole Miss fan, we play down there every 2 years, and it's tough no matter what they're doing. That game's always close. Now, I think Tennessee has some great firepower. Aguilar has looked really good. I really like him at quarterback. But I think this being, a really tough road test that they have not had just quite yet. Now, they had a home test against Georgia, and they were a field goal away from beating that team, which I think is Georgia being one of the better teams in the country, puts them way up there in potential and in skill. I think Aguilar has passed every test so far. But I think Mississippi State has hung in there just enough to be convincing in this game. Again, what I just talked about with A&M, 6.5 is one possession, 7.5 is two. People see the 7, they think touchdown and an extra point. But when you got the hook, that's 2 possessions, okay? So I have decided to stay away from the total in this game, from the spread, from the final score. My insider with Tennessee gave me some great information, and that is he has played Tennessee first quarter spread every game this year, and they are 4-0 covering that number. And it's been everywhere from 14 to 12 to 10. In this game, it is first quarter Tennessee minus 1.5. Just 1.5. Now, again, that's a field goal. That's something. Ties don't count for that. You've got to be able to be ahead after the first quarter, and one reason I do like that a lot, Tennessee is getting some injured players back on the defense. That is going to help them a lot. And one thing that, again, I'll talk about, I'll repeat a lot of things every week that mean a lot to me. One of those things is first drives, because first drives in college football, and in the NFL for that matter, probably more so in college football, are scripted. People don't realize that because it's not talked about a whole lot, but teams, even at this point in week 5, teams will go into the game and their first drive is specifically planned out. There's no adjustments really being made like there is from the second possession on, because they haven't had a chance to see on the field what they're going to be given. But the first drives are, here's everything we've got from you on film. Here's what we've scouted you as. Here's what we're expecting you to throw out at us. So here's our best plays in the playbook for the first drive. And that's why oftentimes you're going to see scoring on the first drive of the game, especially for a team like Tennessee who's got lots and lots of firepower. They can score on you in multiple ways. And again, they have proven every game so far, 4-0 against the spread in the first quarter, that they can score early and score fast. Now, again, getting that boost on the defense back for Tennessee, I think helps them. I see Mississippi State keeping this game close. If you're really wanting to know what I would predict this game total, I'd have Mississippi State covering the 7.5, simply because they did it against Arizona State kind of in a backdoor fashion. I think they are good enough to keep this game close. Mississippi State is 4-0 against the spread this year. They've had no problem covering games. They cover games very well. Water break. And so I put a lot of value in teams that consistently cover. And at this point, when you've covered against 4 different games, against 4 different teams, I put value in that. So if I was going to predict the final score spread, I'd have Mississippi State covering the 7.5. But I think they're playing catch up for most of this game. I think Tennessee starts out fast, starts out early. They know what they're going to expect with the crowd. It is a day game, so that helps them a little bit. So from my insider Tennessee fellow, he gave me Tennessee, predicting them to cover the first quarter spread at 1.5. So I will predict that as well. I'm going to follow him on that. And that is the last game for the afternoon. So let's move on to our last slate here, the nighttime slate, the primetime slate, and let's get this show on the road. First one up, the biggest one in my opinion, Alabama on the road at Georgia. Georgia is currently favored by 3 points. Weird to see that not be 3.5, but currently as it stands, they're just 3. I hate whole numbers because the hook gives you one way or the other. The whole number gives you an opportunity to push, and nobody likes that when you're predicting games. So, yeah, I think I just said it. I typically save my predictions for the end of the information, but this one I'm just going to go ahead and let it out. This is the game of the week for me. I think Georgia is going to cover that 3-point spread, and here's why. Let's go back to the beginning of the show. What did we talk about? Home teams with good environments and good skill sets get a 3-point edge at home from Vegas, as let's call it a courtesy. That being said, Vegas is predicting this to be a pick'em, a 0 spread, pick the winner. And when you're talking about picking winners in this game, Georgia at home against a Bama team that's been exposed already is a no-brainer for me. If I'm going to be on the wrong side of this prediction, I want to be on the wrong side, being Alabama's going to prove me wrong. I would much rather Alabama prove me wrong than Georgia prove me wrong when they were the home team and they were favored and I picked against them. I would feel so stupid doing that. So I don't want to feel stupid. So I'm taking Georgia. The stats really don't apply in this game. You talk about Georgia's record against Alabama and whatever the last 10, it's super lopsided in Alabama's favor. But a lot of those numbers and a lot of those games come against who? The best to ever do it, Nick Saban. All right. And breaking news: Nick Saban's not there anymore. Kalen DeBoer's there. I get Kalen DeBoer's 1-0 against Georgia. That was when he picked up a team from Nick Saban that was as good as anybody in the country, and it's not really hard to coach a team when you are a good coach, which I do think DeBoer is. But when you pick up a star-studded roster that's got everything to offer, yeah, it's not really hard to win games. Okay, so I don't think the stats and the historical stats in this game really matter all that much because DeBoer has only played against Kirby once with Alabama. And so I think if I'm going to predict this game and be on the side, I want to be on the side of the home team in Athens, and I want to be on Kirby Smart's side in this case. And if I get proven wrong, then I get proven wrong. Tip my cap to Alabama and DeBoer. He's fighting for his job. Kirby couldn't be further away from that. The simple rating system has this as a 1-point differential, has Georgia at 15, Bama at 16. Now, you may say, well, you've been giving all this credit to the simple rating system, and all your predictions so far have been on the advantage team in that category, and Bama's got the advantage here, so why are you not taking that? I'll tell you why, because there is some strength of schedule involved in that. Georgia hasn't really played the schedule that Alabama has. Alabama has played Florida State, who has done nothing but be impressive. I think they're going to continue to win, and they're going to be in the conversation at the very end. Georgia hasn't played all that much competition outside of Tennessee, and what they do, they won that game. Talk about the missed field goal all you want. Good teams find ways to win. Kirby's teams find ways to win if they're not going to just blow you out. If they're going to play catch up or they're going to be in a shootout, he's going to find a way to win. So that's what I'm going to predict in this game. So again, let me be proven wrong by Bama, not by Georgia. Georgia -3. The last big game, we have two more games. The last big game, Oregon on the road at Penn State. Penn State is favored -3.5. It's a night game. It's the whiteout for the year. A lot of people are putting credit in that. Giving Penn State 3 points is definitely enticing in this spot. But Penn State, this might as well be their first game of the year. I watch all the college football. I've watched lots of college football. I couldn't tell you that Penn State has even played a game this year. I haven't seen them on the TV. I haven't even seen the scores. I had to go look up the scores just to see exactly what they've been doing this year because their first 4 games might as well not even mattered. They've played nobody. Put some value in that. Now, Oregon hasn't played all that tough of a schedule either, but they have played 2 Power 4 teams. That's something Penn State can't say. Okay? I don't know that the whiteout is going to provide quite the advantage that we think it will be. Now, granted, this is the first big game for them, and I think coming out of the tunnel, it's going to be insane. It's going to be chaotic. That's nothing that Oregon has not seen before. That's nothing that Oregon can't handle. Okay, the numbers I have on this game, I mean, you look at James Franklin's numbers, and they're disturbing. Like, generally disturbing. Penn State, well, I guess James Franklin, but Penn State's 4-20 versus top 10 teams. They're 1-6 versus top 10 teams at home. Makes you feel a lot different about this game being at home, don't it? Okay, everybody wants to put value in home teams. I'm not afraid to take a road team. You saw it with Washington. I'm taking Washington over Ohio State. They're at home, and I think that does matter. UCF on the road at Kansas State, doesn't matter that they're the road team. Okay, but I like Dan Lanning a lot. I think he's super dynamic. He's up there with Lane Kiffin as far as like every opening, they're going to be on the list because everybody wants them. Why does everybody want them? Because they're super successful. You don't see James Franklin coming up in these conversations with open coaching jobs, do you? No. That's because Penn State likes him just enough to keep him around, but there's not these openings that come up every year. He's not in these conversations because people see that the stats that he has. He doesn't win big games at home, and guess what? Again, just like Bama, if he proves me wrong, fine. Let him prove me wrong. He hasn't given me any reason to pick him in this spot. And I will take that because, again, when you're predicting these games, you've got to remember, you have to make your best, most knowledgeable prediction, but you got to be willing to be proven wrong. And if I'm proven wrong by James Franklin when he's 4-20 against top 10, 1-6 versus top 10 at home, if you prove me wrong in that spot, congratulations, dude. And I'll tell you this, too. If they beat Oregon and find them again in the conference championship, Oregon's going to win that game. Write it down right now. So, of course, that doesn't have anything to do with this game this weekend, but I like Oregon a lot better in this game. Drew Allar is 88th in the country in on-target passes at depth. So at depth, from a statistical standpoint, is 10 yards or more. So considering there is 87 quarterbacks in the country that are better at him than throwing balls past the 10-yard line, that's a little disturbing, a little troubling as far as if you're going to predict them to win. I don't really like that. Would not want to support that. And he is 10 for 20, just over 10 yards in general. So the 88th in the country. And when you look at the actual number, he's only at 50%, 10 for 20. I don't know that you're going to be able to run this team to death. Okay, this is going to be typical Big Ten from Penn State, not so much from Oregon. We know Oregon does not fit in the Big Ten mold whatsoever. They're not going to just run you to death and try to slow the game down. They're going to play tempo. They're going to air it out. And I think they're going to be successful because I don't know that Penn State can really keep up in that manner because they haven't seen anything like this yet. Okay? Has James Franklin coached against Dan Lanning before? Of course. Has he played Oregon before? Of course. Oregon is not a team. Oregon is so far ahead of any team they have played so far this year. Penn State might as well have just played 4 warm-up games against nobody. So Oregon has proven twice this year against Power 4 opponents, against teams that have all the NIL money, all the ability to get these rosters that are heavy, and they have proven that they can do it. Penn State, this is their first test of the year. I think one thing goes against them, one thing doesn't go their way, and they're going to be against the 8 ball. They're going to be struggling. And so again, if I get proven wrong, I'd rather it be by James Franklin and Penn State with like the worst stats in the world, versus getting proven wrong by Oregon, who everybody thinks is the better team. So I'm going to predict Oregon minus the 3.5 here. That's a small number. Okay, again, just like the Notre Dame at Arkansas situation, that's a score, a defensive stop, and a score, and you're covering that number with room to spare. So prediction: Oregon minus 3.5. Last game on the card: Memphis on the road at Florida Atlantic. Memphis is minus 14. Why do I feel like that's wrong? Give me a second. I will talk about this while I'm looking this up. One reason I have this game, you're probably like, well, you just said you do marquee matchups, so what's the deal here? The deal is Memphis fits in that category that I've talked about and give a lot of credit to already, and that is they are 4-0 on the season, and they are 4-0 against the spread this year. So that just shows that they have the number in mind. Yeah, they are minus. Yeah, I have it wrong on here. Memphis is minus 14. That was at 14.5, moved down half a point. So that makes me feel a little bit better because it's just 2 touchdowns. It's not 3 possessions, it's 2 possessions. But they're 4-0 against the spread, coming off of a huge win against Arkansas. That's going to play towards their resume. They think that they can make the G5 spot at the end of the year. Now, they got to go through USF, and they still got to go through Tulane, 2 teams that I think they're not going to come out undefeated against. They're going to probably lose at least one of those games, if not both of those games, because I think USF and Tulane are both better than them. But at this point, Florida Atlantic is not good. Memphis is shown that they can at least compete. Even their games that they've struggled in earlier in the year, other than Arkansas, they've shown that they can pull away when they need to. So this is just a simple bet the numbers here. So again, I'm going to predict Memphis minus the 14 in this game, and that will wrap up our picks here. So let me get back to my screen, make myself big on the screen again. So again, this should be the first public episode, I hope. If it's not, it's fine. But I hope you guys take these predictions for what they're worth. Again, we're not condoning gambling. I'm not telling you to gamble. I'm not telling you to take my picks. My picks are just predictions. I'm not promoting sports books. I'm not promoting gambling. This is simply a way for me to set myself apart in this industry as far as talking about football, putting it online. You got to have a way to make yourself unique. I'm not the funniest guy in the world. I'm not the best looking guy in the world by far. And so I've got to have something. I feel very confident in my predictions against spreads. So that's what I'm doing here. So again, be smart, be responsible, have fun here while you're watching this show. Give me feedback, send me questions. If you're like my buddy who's my Tennessee insider, if you got something you feel really strongly about, shoot it over to me. I'll put it on the show. But that'll do it for this show. That is, I don't know how many predictions, but it's a great slate. This is going to be a fantastic weekend. We're going to see upsets. We're going to see blowouts. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And I've had a whole lot of fun talking to you about it tonight. I hope that I see you again on Monday or Tuesday to recap what I hope to be a successful prediction show And with that, we will close out. Again, I appreciate you being here. Find us on YouTube on the page that I'm hoping you're watching this on, and we will try to get this on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you find your podcast. But with that, we'll call it a night. It is currently 10:25, so we are just under an hour. Love that number. I will see you guys next week. Hotty toddy.